All right, and we are live.
Mr. Mahan.
Thank you, Council. And Mr. President, we have a committee meeting on ordinance 2026-10. This is part of the administration's plan. We talked about as we begin to take on more debt service to move towards a leaner and meaner way of looking in things. And I believe Mr. Brinkman and Mr. Sawyers are going to be explaining this to us. Dan, are you ready to go?
Yes.
Oh, you have a microphone down there and everything.
Yeah, I'm all official down here now.
Outstanding.
Is it on? What I just turned it off. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, Council, I've given you 3 handouts that I hope will better explain kind of what we're trying to do here with this ordinance. To go back a little bit, nearly a decade ago, Council put into place some of these percentage allocations for a number of reasons. One of the purposes was to address areas they felt needed attention, allocating into them, some of them into the 400 series funds from which payroll cannot be paid, which they felt they were ensuring certain areas might need attention, getting attention. I think Mr. President was on council then. I think our mayor was also on council at that time. So among these, you got the 401 Capital Improvement Fund, 405 Roads and Bridges Fund that were each allocated 19.5% of the 1%. I think it's important to note here that we're talking about half of the income tax allocation. So as you can see from the one of our monthly reports that I printed for you guys for March, you have half of the income, which you'll see the top half of the sheet adds up to 100%, and then the bottom half actually adds up to 100% in 2 different spots. The bottom half is for police and fire. The top half is for everything else the city does. So let's see. All right. So for what we're kind of trying to do here is we're looking to change the 401 and the 405 down to something which our safety service director thought to be more manageable, to 15% and to 11% respectively. This will allow additional revenue to go into the 407, which we created beginning of last year, Capital Improvement Fund, and which we're hoping we can use the 407 then to carry a lot of the debt service from then on once some of these projects are completed. Let's see. You can see from the fund reports I printed that the 401 and 405 get other revenue besides their income tax allocation. 401 just last year got $861,000 in reimbursements. And the 405, by some great efforts by our engineering department, grabbed $1.5 million in grant dollars from various sources. So 2 minor things that this ordinance also accomplishes is that it increases the general fund modestly from 52 to 54%, which will net us about 219% for $219,000 a year. All the numbers on this sheet, I'll also note that I gave to council. We're assuming 0% year-over-year increase. Obviously hoping it's going to be better than that, but we tried to be conservative with the numbers I gave you. The other thing is that we're axing the bond retirement fund portion, which is kind of unique among the allocations on the sheet in that everything else is percentages, and that's a set dollar figure, which kind of from looking at it, you think, when did they come up with basically $130,000 a year? That might have been out of date as soon as they implemented it, just in terms of the debt load we currently have. But the main reason we're changing that is because it screws up all the formulas, because you have everything else on a percentage basis, you're putting just a dollar figure in there, so you have to kind of backdoor it at the end of the month and subtract those, figure out the dollar figures to account for that. So that one's more of a housekeeping on our side. Of course, we plan to make our debt payments, budget for them, but happy to entertain any questions any of y'all might have on this.
Council, I would add 2 other things. One, for the clarity for both the public and the media. This is allocation of current tax revenue. This is not messing with any sort of the tax asking the public for more taxes, and this is not, forward or backward. This is just as tax revenue comes in, how do we allocate it in these different funds? And additionally, this is not permanent either, as we do not, these allocations, because we do not know what the debt service will currently be. So right now, we feel like this is a workable solution with our kind of estimates moving forward. But if we get into next year and it looks like the debt load for both the police station, the municipal center, the remodel of 40 Public Square for court services, and as we start looking at designs for the East End Fire Station and beyond, if more is needed, then we'll have to assess at that point. But we do have a significant amount of municipal facility work that needs done, and we're going to have to figure out how to handle that debt load while also running the government. So just want to point that out.
Council, this will receive its second reading tonight. We'll go 3 readings on this. Zach, could I have maybe 5 minutes, a committee meeting next time, just to make sure we have all of the i's dotted and t's crossed? Before I yield my time, I'm having trouble hearing from the table, but I'm deaf.
Is there a speaker that comes through the ceiling or something? We can't hear you very well.
Okay. So Zach, I can't hear the folks at the table. I don't know if you can turn them up, or I know it's
It
me.
is you. I hear them fine.
I throw my hair in the air.
Okay. Quentin, can you hear the folks at the table, or are you struggling too?
I can hear them, but we're not hearing feedback.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we could get that worked out. Right now, we're struggling to hear from the, I am struggling to hear from the table, and maybe some of my friends. Okay, thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. We'll adjourn that. We'll move now to utilities with Mr. Ruckman to discuss the codified ordinance on taxi cabs.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, taxi cabs. We have apparently received some inquiries regarding taxi cabs, and for those of you who don't know, there is a taxi cab commission. So,
Well,
Mr. Brown.
for the moment.
Yeah, we have some ideas about that.
The city first started regulating both taxi cabs and the people who drive them in 2009. I will have to admit that it was right after I was hired an assistant city law director. The reason for the decision to regulate them at that time was there was a group in town called Dad's Taxi, run by the various Gary Priest and his family, and they had some trouble with some of the various laws and rules and things like that, and so the city created the taxi cab, both the registration and licensing of the drivers and the registration and licensing of the taxi cab companies. Dad's Taxi sort of withered away a couple of years after they burst upon the scene, and we haven't had any other taxis in the city. I'm sure that someone out there is thinking, but what about Uber and Lyft and those types of companies? The state has specifically removed the municipality's ability to regulate the ride-sharing companies. So we can only regulate actual taxi cabs. Recently, the mayor received an inquiry from someone who has apparently acquired several old checker cabs and has repainted them and wishes to start another taxi service here in the city again. And because of that, we took a look at our old legislation and decided maybe we could do a little better this time. And we talked about whether we needed a separate taxi cab commission. And the decision amongst the members of the administration was that we really didn't need one. We already have a public utilities commission, and because of that, we felt that they were the group. They meet monthly, and the last time the taxi cab commission had met was probably in 2011. And we weren't even sure that there were actually appointed members anymore. So we thought by transferring the things that the Taxi Cab Commission did to the Utilities Commission, and to take the licensing part of that and transfer that to our new city inspector, and they're doing that with a lot of other different types, that would modernize our taxi cab licensing as well as the taxi cab driver's licensing and registration. So that's how we ended up here. So the legislation before you today, basically, it kills off the Taxi Cab Commission. It transfers their powers to the Public Utilities Commission. The licensing and registration for the taxi cab drivers, which was originally in the police department, is then transferred to our city inspector. Okay? Any questions?
So if somebody wants to run a taxi service, they have to apply and be approved and have licensing and all that stuff.
There are two separate licenses. There's the license for the taxi cab company, and then there's the licensing for the driver themselves. So there are two separate licenses.
And just for clarification, does like Uber or Lyft or anybody, do they have to apply to operate in the city limits?
They do not. We are not allowed to make them do that.
Does anybody have any questions? This is on its second reading this evening. If nobody has any issues with it, I would move to suspend the rules just to get it, since we have had an inquiry, to move it along so that it actually really does shift over to the Utility Commission, and we can deal with that appropriately should the person continue in their pursuit of doing a right service.
Any objection to suspending the rules?
No.
All right. We're back to Mr. Ruckman. Want to discuss the curbside recycling.
Yeah, curbside recycling. Mr. Vernon, I think you have some things to say about this as well.
Curbside recycling. Once again, the city inspector has taken over issuing the licenses for those companies that wish to pick up trash within the city. One of the things that has continually been a problem for all of this is the pickup of recycling. When the legislation was originally done, they buried how often recycling is supposed to be picked up in the definition section rather than in the actual operative sections. Secondly, some of the companies that provide trash service in the city don't pick up weekly. They have people buy a bi-weekly or a monthly pickup. However, the way the definitions are buried in the beginning of the the chapter, they still have to pick up recycling weekly. And because of that, the legislation we've drafted here makes it clear that recycling is picked up on the same schedule that you pick up trash. It's real simple. If you get weekly trash service, you have to have weekly recycling. If you have bi-weekly, it's bi-weekly, or monthly, it's monthly. Just so that we're not imposing some sort of extra mandate on those companies that pick up trash less than weekly. The amendment that has been proposed that we've given all of you here just removes any references in the code that would be contrary to the newest section. Are there any questions?
Tell me about what happened at the taxi cab drivers owners meeting and the objections to that and what happened. So I know.
Mr. Zimmerman?
Taxi, you said taxi.
You said taxi, and we're talking about
Waste haulers? Waste haulers?
Yes.
Okay.
Waste haulers, she said taxi cab.
I'm sorry.
hear me, or do I need to use?
You gotta use that so it goes through.
Wait, sorry, I'm sorry.
It should already be on the wireless mic.
Like Mr. Bourne was explaining, we had a meeting. I contacted all of the haulers I could find within the city limits. Mr. Miller was gracious enough to come and observe our meeting. And it was a little contentious at times, but we worked through it and everything. And then at the very end, when we finally said, you will offer recycling, at the very end, one of the companies says, well, how often do I have to recycle? There's nothing in writing about that here. So that made it very obvious to me that they was going to try to do less and less, because that is a problem, because if the recycling's contaminated or anything like that, the transfer stations won't take them. But they need to work with their customers so they can, have the recycling be able to be accepted. So that being said, Mr. Bourne and I discussed it, and so we don't have any confusion or cloudiness, we wanted to make sure it was very clear that when they do a weekly or bi-weekly, whatever, they also have to offer the same in recycling. So I would say the majority of all of us here get our trash picked up weekly. So they should be picking up or offering recycling weekly. So.
Question, so my only thing that I don't see in this is that there's any specificity about the trash having to be separate from the recycling. In a separate bag, a separate bin?
Well,
There are other provisions that say that. It requires each trash hauling company to provide a separate recycling container.
Okay,
I have a copy of the.
Okay.
Yeah,
if you would
this
like to see that.
verbiage
That's
is
good.
just
That's
for
important, though,
recycling.
but-
is
So
all
we're
it
just dealing with the one piece of it having to be done weekly.
This
How,
is cleaning
how
up.
often
This
they
is-
have to do it.
This is a very small piece of
Yep.
755.
Okay.
And I have a copy of 755 if you'd like to see that during our break.
Because I've had neighbors tell me that they're doing recycling, but I don't see separate bins, but this,
Well, and then that's where my department comes in. Then we would reach out, and
there's some haulers that I don't believe are doing that, so.
I would say your assumption's probably correct. That's why we're trying to get all the verbiage straight as we can.
Question. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
We're not requiring residents to recycle, though.
No. They just
I
have
just
to
think
have the
that-
opportunity. We're-
The verbiage was a little confusing there. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, this is all on the hauler. They have to offer it, and they have to also offer the bins, the weatherproof bins for 'em.
This legislation, if I may,
No,
this
go ahead.
legislation doesn't get into that. There is already a piece in 755 that's in the definitions, but this piece moves it from just definitions to operative language, and it clarifies, and I think it's more specific. But this is not rewriting 755. It is just clarifying what the true intention was behind, when we wrote 755, we did not intend that you could, run through once a year, pick up recycling, and be like, all right, I offered recycling. What more do you want? Like, that's enough out of you, Ruckman. All right.
Yeah, and from attending that meeting with all the different trash hauling companies and stuff like that, I was kind of left with the impression that there was a few of the smaller companies that were trying to kind of skirt the rule a little bit in order to be a little bit more competitive. They even mentioned as much as like, well, I can't compete with the big guys and everything like this. And it's like, basically at some point in time, I believe I spoke up and I said, look, my responsibility of sitting on council is not taking care of your business. It's looking out for what's in the best interest of the citizens of Mount Vernon. So if you need a competitive edge, you're going to have to find it elsewhere because, this, and I would even go one step further a little bit saying that it did spark a little bit of debate and some ideas and everything like that maybe something in the future we may want to re-examine this whole thing and maybe look at either going to a single source supplier. I spoke with a representative of Rumpke. They said they could offer almost a 40% discount if going to a single source supplier. That is one alternative. The alternative that I personally like a little bit better is if we go to a single source supplier and the side of the truck says City of Mount Vernon. And so that's something we can take up at a different time, but yeah, it's.
And as my department grows, no.
Yes, well, I believe it was
No,
you that's
I
already done some
say that in
initial
jest.
research on that, so.
I sat on DKMM for the mayor and the city. I represent our city on that Delaware, Knox, Morrow, and Marion County Solid Waste District. Many communities have a single hauler. If that's what council would decide, then I would execute that to the best of my ability, like I do anything or everything to do with my job. So this just tidies it up a little bit, takes the guesswork out. They can't come back and say, well, it doesn't
Closes the
specifically
loophole.
say that. It
Basically,
does.
it
It
closes
does.
the loophole.
And it's fair for everyone. I, like the councilman said, we're here to make sure that the citizens of Mount Vernon is taken care of. We're not here to address people's financial woes with their personal business. So,
Just to clarify.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
to bring things back on track, though.
There's a lot of opinions on how we could handle waste hauling and recycling. This one piece of legislation just handles the clarification of what is frankly the intent of the law and what is already in 755. We're just moving it from the definitions section into the operative language of the legislation and giving it a little bit more clarity because to Councilman Miller's point, I think we can do both. I think we can look out for the citizens of Mount Vernon and look out for the businesses that are operating in the city. We just have to even that playing field and not make sure that people are exploiting a loophole that was never intended to exist.
yeah.
So that's not fair.
And thank you, Mr. Sauer. And Mount Vernon is open. If you want to start a business and you want to be a hauler, feel free. Just make sure that you get in contact with my department, and we'll help you with the ordinances, the rules, and permitting. So,
With that being said, I am a minute over my time, I believe, so.
All right, we're gonna adjourn the Utilities Commission. We're gonna move now to Mrs. Hager with Parks and Recreations. One of my favorite topics is the Blackjack Wetlands Project.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I'm going to turn this over to Quentin and Brian to give us an overview of this really cool project. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me? Try to tune this thing in a little bit. Okay, so Blackjack Wetland, if you're not familiar, is south. It is next to the new Liberty Crossing, Industrial Park Drive, and this was purchased with funds, Clean Ohio funds, which are part of the Ohio Public Works Commission as sort of an environmental side. Since it was purchased by that allows us to come and apply for funds. The other thing to realize is the city does own this. Now it has a pretty strong restriction. It is to stay a wetland and nature preserve. So we own it, but we have a lot of responsibility to maintain it. The intent was to also make it accessible to the public in the original plan, and we're going to take the next steps. And to do that, we're going to introduce Quentin Platt, who has recently become a professional engineer.
Woohoo!
Thank you. So late last fall, you authorized and directed us to apply for an NRAC grant to do some improvements here at the Blackjack Wetland, and I'm happy to say that we were awarded that grant. It was $185,000 for these exact improvements that you're looking at here. So I'm just going to go over those again. What you're seeing in the blue shaded area, those are the existing wetlands. So those are wetlands we've had professionally delineated. They're already there. We're not doing anything in the wetlands. We're going to actually try to minimize our impact to the wetlands throughout this project. You'll see a green line that kind of meanders throughout the middle of our project area here, and that's going to be our walking trail. And then as it crosses the wetlands in a couple of spots, so we can give viewers and visitors a nice opportunity to see the buttonbush that are there and maybe some of the geese and ducks that'll be hanging out there. We're going to have some boardwalks that go through that area so that you can keep your feet dry and minimize your impact to the wetland. There's also a clearing on the northeast part of the project that exists there. I'm not sure why the clearing's there, but we thought it looked like a really good spot to put a nice native prairie in that would be secluded and then also provide some diversity in that walking area. So as you're walking through the woods, eventually you earn this beautiful view of this native prairie. So that would include some invasive removals and then establishing that prairie with native flowers and native grasses. And then to boot, we have a stream restoration project that's just along Delano Run. So if you see at the bottom there's a little blue outline that says Oxbow Restoration. So at some point, most of the streams in our area and throughout the country were channelized. And what we see now isn't the actual natural state or flow of the stream. So in that area, we identified that there was an oxbow, or there was a bend in the stream, and when they channelized it, they kind of pushed the material up there and blocked the water from flowing that direction. So all we're really going to do is remove some of that material and restore that connection to the floodplain of Delano Run into that area. It currently sits as a vernal pool, and the last time we were out there, we were with a really smart naturalist that was hopefully going to provide some assistance with this project, and he found fairy shrimp, which I'd never heard of before, but they're little tiny shrimp that live in freshwater around here, and they only live in vernal pools. So it was really cool to see that, and just to see the kind of ecology that we find here and really not in other places. And then hopefully at some point, we would like to partner with the developers of the Liberty Crossing and connect their trail into this park. So they already have a planned trail on the west side of their project. And if you look down on the bottom left side, you'll see where it says future three-sided box culvert for trail connection. So we'd like to partner with them and give their residents an opportunity to be able to walk into this park from their development as well and not have to go around and drive when it's just right next door. So that's still to come. We don't really know the state of that, but we have been talking to them about that. So.
Will this be accessible? What are these paths going to be, or is it going to be dirt, or?
They won't be ADA. Okay. They will be as accessible as we can make them. I'm not sure that we're going to do mulch, but we will clear it, and we probably will have a more accessible path into the park, if that makes sense. So as you're leaving the parking area and going into the wooded area, that will be more of an accessible path, maybe crushed limestone or something like that, or mulched, potentially even a sidewalk, but that would be the most expensive option there. But the trail itself will not be fully ADA accessible.
Okay, thank you.
About 20-some years ago, City Council had a field trip, and we had the opportunity to go out and see the Buttonbush Bog. We got to see everything. Is there a chance that the people here could do that?
Yeah, just let me know. Yeah, we've given several tours
Yeah,
out there.
Beautiful area. When's the Buttonbush Bog bloom?
The buttonbush probably won't be flowering until July or early August. Right now is a really good time, actually, if you want to see the spring ephemerals. There's a lot of nice little woodland flowers that are out there that you can see other places, but it's just really nice to see there. And with the diversity of the trees that are there, it's really beautiful. There's a really nice, beautiful apple tree just on the edge of the clearing here too. That's really showy.
It was a very interesting trip, and City Council really appreciate it. I don't know if other people are interested in seeing it or not, but it's an unreal property. I mean, it's probably one of the best properties nature-wise in this whole county. I'm on the county parks board, and I see a lot of county parks, but this is an absolute gem.
Yeah, just to add, the amount of invasive plants in the wooded area is almost zero when you walk in there. You know, we're used to seeing in our parks lots of honeysuckle, lots of autumn olive, lots of privet, lots of multiflora rose, Dame's rocket, garlic mustard. There's almost none of that in here. And the only place you really see that is when you get out into the clearing area, which we're hopefully going to remove all of it and then put it back with native. So it really is in pristine condition. Yeah.
Where's Blackjack Road on this map?
Right.
Blackjack Road, if you turn your paper this way, And
Right
you
there.
go north on Industrial Park Drive, that's Blackjack Road right there.
Okay. Yeah.
So if we get heavy, heavy rain, would this walking path be underwater or not? You know what I mean?
Potentially. So we're going to extend the boardwalk beyond the limits of the delineated wetland. So in the dry times of the year, what is actually delineated as wetland is, you wouldn't know it. You're just walking through it. And unless you're an ecologist and you go, oh, that's a sedge, or you happen to take a sample of the soil and you saw that it was hydric and full of this really dark, earthy stuff, you wouldn't know that it was a wetland there. So our hope is that you would still be able to walk this even after some good heavy rains.
And if you want to set an example of this, Sheedy Park, which is in Morrow County, when I was on the Knox Community Foundation, the Knox Community Foundation Board, we gave that to Morrow County, and they have all the boardwalks. They even have one that has a walking stair where you got a bridge, not a bridge, stairs you can go out and overlook all the bog.
Oh, yeah, they have
And
one.
it's absolutely gorgeous. It's over just not far from Highland School, and it's Sheedy Park and Morrow County. It's absolutely gorgeous place to walk, especially this time of year when the trillium are in bloom. And so if you get a chance to see that, but I would like for City Council, if you're interested, to see this property because it is absolutely gorgeous.
Can I ask? I'd like to ask a question about the accessibility again. Is that choice an ecological choice to make it a path that's not going to be accessible, like ADA compliant, or is that a financial choice?
So ADA compliance is it's very tricky, especially in a situation like this. It would increase the cost of the project a lot,
Yeah.
and one of the best. Brian might have some other ideas, but one of the easiest ways I could think of doing it would be to use something like crushed limestone and some small, like number 8 or number 9 limestone, and that's not really what we want to introduce into this environment. That's not natural here. This isn't a limestone area, so we wouldn't want to introduce that stone into the park. I don't know if Brian would have some
Sort
other
of
ways to make it ADA,
both.
but
So the thing to think about, just as sort of in that balance aspect of it, if we want folks that have limited mobility to access this, it may be easier to partner with some kind of a specialized electric wheelchair or something. You know, there are some hunting clubs that have types of electric wheelchairs or accessibility that are a little more all-terrain. I think that's a good balance because we do have a pretty long list of restrictions of what we can do out here. And then also the maintenance. If we have the gravel coming up to the wood and there's a 1/4 inch difference, then it's not accessible. And what we wouldn't want to do, the worst thing you can do is invite someone in to an area saying this is accessible and then they get there and they're stuck.
Yeah.
So we want, it's a balancing act. So if we want to do specific things for inviting folks in, we would need to use specialized equipment would be my recommendation.
Brian and Quentin, this is, Delano runs part of the whole Cocosine floodplain, so a wetland like this is really soaking up a lot of potential flood water as well. So keeping it the way it is without overly developing it is important. Am I
Yes.
correct in that?
Yeah, that helps. It helps to clean the water, it helps to absorb the water, helps a lot. Good point. The other thing you should note, we are not asking for the emergency clause, so I'll look at Mr. Miller here. These funds become available July 1st, so we are working through this process, giving you plenty of time to consider it, but there is no emergency here.
Okay, so are there any more questions? No? Okay, so we'll take this to a second reading tonight, and we're good with that? Excellent.
One of my favorite projects. Let's move on now to Resolution 2630, Mrs. Hager on the Veterans Walk of Honor.
Thank you again, Mr. President and Council. Ryan, do you want to go over this with us also?
Well, we'll get you started. So let's remember where we are, right? So we have, thanks to Mr. Salyer's good leadership and council, we have created American Heritage Park which is located on South Main Street at the CA&C Depot. So the idea is to make this sort of the center of, you know, we have our Statue of Liberty there. We have the opportunity to, we have the Bell Circle, which is listed here, and I'll let Quentin get in. We have invested quite a bit. So I'm going to be the historian, and then Quentin's going to be the future person, and then we're going to talk about a potential donation. So we have done a major rehabilitation, John Alberts, with our buildings department. We have re-roofed the building. We have done a whole bunch of work, the paint, the insulation, the air handling. We have both parking lots have been restored. So we have a world-class facility. And I'll let Quentin talk about his design for what you have, and then we have an opportunity to put a statue in the middle. But I'll let Quentin talk about.
Sure. So, as the name of the park implies, American Heritage Park, the administration's recently, well, not, I shouldn't say recently, it was about a year ago, asked, hey, can we move the Veterans Walk of Honor there? It seems like a more fitting place than the square. And so we threw together some concept plans, and this is kind of where we've landed right now. So what you're looking at, unfortunately, I don't have an updated aerial to show our nice new parking lot and everything, but we'll get there. As soon as you drive in, you've crossed over the bike path. You go to the Dan Emmett House, which you'll see on the bottom left here. We'll have 3 entrances into our Veterans Walk of Honor. And then in the center, we'll have the statue, which Brian will talk about later. Surrounding that, we'll hope to have 3 benches using larchwood, which we harvested from Riverside Park. We're told it's a really good wood for making benches and picnic tables and such, probably because it's also wood that they harvest turpentine from, so maybe that helps preserve it. I don't know. Not a chemist. And then in the red here, this would be our area where we would have our veteran memorial bricks. So right now, the Veterans Walk of Honor, the bricks are at ground level, and there's a very small walking path. I think it's about 2 feet that you walk, and you've got bricks on either side. I'm pretty young, but when I'm out there looking for my grandpa and I never seem to remember where his brick is, it does get a little tiresome that I'm bending over the whole time, and then there's dirt all over the bricks, and you see people walking on them. And if there's somebody walking the other way, you almost don't really have a choice but to walk on the bricks to walk around them. So what we'd like to do is provide a nice wide path. We'd like to put a 6-foot wide path in here and then elevate the bricks. So on the bottom left side of your page is kind of a concept of this, having a curb, a retainer curb, elevating the bricks up just slightly and then putting them at an angle. So you're not bending your neck looking straight down, but you can kind of see them as just casually as you're walking along, and then getting them up where it's very clear that this is not a place that you walk. We don't step on these bricks that are honoring our veterans. Absolutely. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. So another feature that I thought was really cool we were able to fit in here. Currently at the Veterans Walk, we have 5 of these 18-inch square pavers, and each one represents one of the branches of the United States Armed Forces. We now have 6 branches of the Armed Forces, and we have this triangular shape, which means I can fit 6 in there, and I have this nice symmetry there. So on the corners of our benches here, what we'd like to do is put one of those stones there, representing each of the Armed Forces. So that as you're sitting there, you can look over and go, oh, I didn't know Space Force was a thing, or I forgot about, this other branch, maybe I didn't know that, I'm from a military family and can kind of look into that.
Discussion about the Navy today and how the Marines and the Navy have a relationship. So.
And another important thing here is this is going to provide a lot more capacity. It's going to be a lot more expandable than the current location. We do have room at the current location for several more bricks, but I think this is going to provide about twice as much space at the end of the day for our veterans to be honored. So.
The original concept had a tree in the center. The challenge is we have some very sandy soil. This is a site with fill. If the tree dies, we all look really bad. Then I got a phone call saying, hey, there's a statue that has been on tour and it needs a home. And so we have, at this point, an unnamed donor that would like to provide the statue and the base to the city. We did not prepare legislation for this at this time, but If you're interested in this silent battle statue, there's a paper we've provided, and at the next meeting, we would start the legislative process to accept this donation. Questions?
I have a question. With this design, does it still provide enough space to ever remove this house if that were to be a desire down the road?
So we are talking with the owner of the asset, the model house, we shall say.
The White House.
Yes, the White House. And the Model Railroad Museum, about that becoming a railroad museum. It has been brought up publicly that it would be nice if we had a museum that honored the contributions of the rail lines locally. We've talked with our Kokosing Model Rail Club about some of their work being permanently installed in the interior of that house. Working with a historical society and taking the artifacts of Dan Emmett out and putting them in the historical society where they can be appreciated there, but making sure that when people come to American Heritage Park, they're getting they can visit Liberty Plaza, they can visit the depot as a visitor center, they can visit the Veterans Honor Walk, they can visit the Bell Circle, and then they can visit a railroad museum that's accessible. So, what's that? And then we do have space in the future for a first responders memorial back there as well. So it's really a park for history and reflection, and not just something that's stuck out there in the back. So yeah, we have this is a really cool and unique opportunity to be a kind of a regional park that people want to visit and explore. So we're really excited about this.
I think it's awesome. And I know we've talked a little bit about the number of activities we have on the square and the number of people that are on the square stepping on the bricks, and quite frankly. So moving it out here, I think this is awesome. I personally do.
I like it, that it's on a slope where they can't step on it.
Yes, yes.
I really like that.
Yep.
And I think a lot of times by the time people are stepping on the bricks, they don't even realize what they're doing, and,
Yeah.
they see that. So it provides more of an area for people to utilize the public square for what it is, a
Yeah.
public square.
Yeah, this becomes a welcome area for everybody. We have so many people coming to us by the trail, by
Yeah.
South Main Street, and hopefully eventually some more kayaking. This area becomes a welcome area, a place for reflection, a place to sit and observe downtown Mount Vernon.
We will encourage this person in the burgundy van to move before we put that.
Can I ask a question about this?
Yeah, yeah.
Was it? It's a touring.
Right.
Would it be just
They are looking
hanging out for a minute, or would it be
The designer
permanent?
is looking for the permanent home.
Okay.
The goal of the designer is to have 2 in each state. So this one has been on tour, and then the donor would be the person to bring it home to us.
Thanks.
So it would be fixed. We would build a foundation very similar to Lady Liberty, except more in line. It would be in the ground type of foundation, but more in line with what you see on the diagram, and then in Quentin's rendition.
Anything else, Mrs. Hager?
We don't need any more, another committee meeting or anything, do we? Do we feel pretty clear on this? Okay, well, we'll give it a second reading tonight.
Okay.
And we'll add, I'll work with everybody to add legislation to accept the donation.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
We are adjourning committee meetings. We're now in recess until 7:30 p.m. I'm gonna echo. When we begin the legislative portion of the meeting. You can hear me now.